If you are in pain, this video is for you. If you're hurting emotionally, if you're hurting financially, if you're hurting in your marriage, if you're hurting physically, you've got cancer or some ailment, you're lost a leg or an eye or an arm. If you're hurting emotionally because you lost a friendship, a family member died, and you're struggling, so many people turn away from God. So many people don't know what to do with the pain. So many people want to run from that pain. So I'd like to talk with you about how do we handle that? What is the purpose of our pain? I think about when I gave birth to my first child. In the 80s, I had natural labor and delivery, maybe a Tylenol for pain, but that didn't do much. And as I was in labor with my first daughter, I remember my contractions started 5 minutes apart, and they were strong, and they got faster and faster. It was a 7-hour labor, but it was very excruciating. And they had me hooked up to the little machine, and I saw it as it was going up, and the contractions coming, contractions down, going down. I was like, oh, no, 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 here comes another one. Oh my gosh, here comes another one. I'll never be able to handle it. And it was horrible. And then I'd sit there and make it through that one. I was like, no, 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 not another one, not another one. And I'd be focusing on the contraction that was to come. And I was like, I just can't, here comes another one, oh my gosh. And when I finished having my first child, I said, I'll never do that again. The pain was so bad. Fast forward 3 years, and I gave birth to my second child, which is really funny because I had Lamaze classes for my first daughter, and I didn't have them for my second child. Again, stick with me. This is not a labor and delivery video. But with my second daughter, I knew I had to go through this pain. I knew there was a purpose, and I knew nothing was going to change it. So as each contraction happened, instead of dreading it, I said, instead, one less contraction. One contraction closer to my child. So when the next contraction came, I would suck it up, I would go through it, I'd deal with the pain, and then say one less contraction. If we look at our lives here on earth, it is all about how we manage the pain, what we do with it. Are we going to see a greater purpose in our pain, or are we going to dread it? I know that this life is so painful that so many of us want to run from it. So many of us want to scream. So many of us want to blame God, hate God, deny God. And what I want to remind you is for the proper place of pain is it can be valuable. But I think so much about a movie I saw, and maybe you guys saw it. I always, Google good Catholic movies because I want to watch a movie. And of course, it only brings me up to movies made in the 1700s or, before George Washington was around. And in all seriousness, I'm looking at Ben-Hur, the Ten Commandments, 1940s movies. But within the past couple of years, I saw a movie called For Greater Glory. And I was like, what? Andy Garcia, he's still alive? And wait a minute, this is a modern movie and a Catholic movie and it's about God? It was fantastic. And in that movie, it was about the 14-year-old martyr. Jose Escriva del Rio. I might have messed that up. In either case, in that movie, we see his life, we see the suffering, we see the martyrdom, we see how he had the soles of his feet cut and he had to walk along salted gravel roads and let it burn him and bleed. And he eventually fell into his own grave and died. He was a martyr. Now, why am I telling you this? Because we're talking about suffering. That had to be excruciating. But what remained in his mind was what the priest in the movie, the priest that trained him to be an altar boy, the priest that was martyred in front of him, what he had said to him was, there is no greater glory than to die for Christ. So for greater glory, we accept our pains. If pain was just something God said, suck it up, offer it to me, and go through this life in pain, it wouldn't have much meaning. But there are so many of you watching this video that are being persecuted. I'm going to get past the physical pain for a moment. But you're being persecuted, you're being hurt, you're being shunned by your family, you're being called names, you're being hurt. I've been estranged from a family member, and it's excruciating. For 3 years, a daughter and I didn't talk to each other, though I tried, and it was more excruciating than the labor pains I had with her as a baby. We've since reconciled, but I look at that time, and the Lord said to me, if you had to choose between your child or me, what would you choose? And He says that to a lot of you. You may suffer now, but there is a greater glory in your suffering when you get to heaven. I know I've said this in other videos before, but Jesus doesn't leave us out here just to get persecuted for His sake, but to say for every suffering, for every pain you endure on this earth. And yes, that's emotional pain. Yes, that's pain when people call you names. Yes, that's pain with your cancer. Yes, that's every kind of insult and assault you could take here. Yeah, even white martyrdom, red martyrdom. Red when you actually die and spill your blood. White when you die to everything, like St. John did on the island of Patmos. He wasn't physically martyred, but he was martyred for all practical purposes. So when I decide that I'm going to fight for God, when I do these videos, when I tell people to fight the devil's works that are going on, when I tell people about what I see, what's about to happen in society, the chastisements, the times ahead of us, the things our Blessed Mother said would happen if we didn't change our ways, and we didn't change our ways. We only got worse. The Lord keeps reminding me, Christine, it's going to be painful. But if you endure that pain for a greater glory, you will exchange that for a crown in heaven. And again, I think that, the church and the Bible is filled with so much symbolism that we tend to think that's just metaphorical, and it may be. But I do know that the Lord paves the ground in gold and builds mansions, and He does talk about crowns. And He talks about us being in our youth, and it's estimated that we'll be, approximately the age 33 in heaven. I just know I'll have whatever my best body and best looks were. We'll be in heaven, and maybe even better. But we will have physically beautiful clothing, physically beautiful crowns, and they will be commensurate with the amount of suffering you endured here. But not just the amount of suffering you endured, but the amount of suffering you endured willingly for God, for the kingdom, to win souls. To win souls. So just a minor trajectory change when it comes to thinking about pain is so many of us run from it, and yet, or we drug ourselves, or we do whatever we can. We'll take alcohol or drugs or food, whatever we can to numb the pain. When if we learn rather ways to walk through that pain and offer it to God for a greater glory, oh, what the reward will be. And we can learn to do this. I think when I was a little girl, and I wonder if saints have done this. I remember when I was a little girl, I was kind of hyper, so I ran in the water and I jumped in the lake, and there was a rock, and it cut the bottom of my foot, and I had to get stitches in the soft center part of my foot. And I remember, I had to be about 6, 7, 8 years old. I remember sitting on the kitchen sink. My mom set me up there, and she had to go get some dressing for the injury or whatever. And I remember sitting there for a lengthy period of time as a child thinking, what is pain? Of course, I didn't understand nerve endings and things back then. But I remember meditating my pain away. I remember thinking, what is pain? It's not a thing. There's not a hammer. There's not And God maybe was teaching me something back then, because I've never forgotten when I just kind of put myself in this state of meditation and made the pain go away. I think of St. Lawrence, who was on the spit, and he was literally being, cooked and burnt on the side. And he didn't die right away. He's the one that jokingly said, "Turn me over. Now I think I'm done on this side." Was he not in pain as he was getting fried like a piece of bacon? Pun intended. Or did he know how to endure that suffering for a greater glory? Now, so many of us want to run from it. I can't do that, Christine. Not me, not me. And so you'll tend to run from the things that are going to cause you pain in your life. But I think about our lives, and when we pass through this life to the next, death hurts. My brother-in-law was killed by a 18-wheeler that hit him on his motorcycle 4 years ago yesterday, as a matter of fact. That had to hurt, but hopefully it went quickly. My mother-in-law died of cancer, bone cancer, and I watched her cry out, and I asked her how it felt, and she said it felt like they were biting me. No matter how we die, we have to go through pain, but what a wonderful gift it will be knowing that we've trained ourselves to say, okay, I'm going to go through that. And in that time, I'm going to offer it up, whether it's physical, the pain of my death, the pain of right now, going through cancer treatment, going through a broken marriage, watching a child be addicted to drugs, watching a spouse or a loved one be a prostitute. God is asking us to learn how to receive and accept that pain, kind of in a way where we can meditate it, not meditate it away, but meditate it away to God. I give this to you, God, so that He can hand us something better. But to also be able to say, I receive it and I accept it for a greater glory, Lord. I know I deserve nothing. I'm nothing but a filthy sinner. But when I go to heaven, I know it'll be worth something. Oh, guys, remember, I know I've said this in several videos, when you die and you've been there for a lengthy period of time, even if you've been there for a moment and you've been there for 5 years and you've been there for a month of the pure ecstasy, you will look back and think, I'm so glad I carried that pain and I didn't run from it. You will be rewarded. Souls will be saved because of your suffering. Make it purposeful. Make it something powerful and use it for God's greater glory. You can do this. I'm praying for you. I'm Dr. Christine Bacon. Thanks again for watching an informational Bacon Bit. And don't ever forget to live your life sunny side up.